have you attempted to bridge the kind of cultural and political divide between Eastern and Western Washington? Because I think for a lot of folks who don't know the state of Washington very much, Eastern Washington is a fairly conservative area, and I think that I'm interested to hear how bridging that divide has given you some ideas about how you would attempt to bridge political and cultural divides on a nationwide scale.
Well, I've had some experience in that because I started my time in public life in a little town called Selah, Washington. It was a town about 3,500, about 130 miles east of Seattle. It was a very red Republican agricultural district where I raised hay and 3 feral boys in the sagebrush of the Yakima Valley, and Trudy and I loved living there. And I got involved in a school bond issue. We passed it, and then the chowder heads in the legislature cut the funding formula, so I got mad and ran for the legislature. And I was in the legislature for 2 terms and then Congress for 1 term, and those are all upset victories, so I have some sense of this. And the way you win in those areas is to appeal to people the things we have in common, which is job creation and good schools. And I won 3 out of 4 elections by talking about those things, by standing on the street corners and shaking hands. So I've won in places like the small towns up and down in the Midwest, and I feel at home in those environments. But eventually you do have to stand up on your principles. And in 1994, when we were only 3 votes short of passing the assault weapon ban, I knew right here that was the right thing to do. We were having our kids shot in these massacres, and I knew in my heart that we did not need weapons of war. So I knew that was a political peril to me, and frankly, I knew I'd probably lose my seat if I voted for it. But I voted for that. And I knew that was the right vote then, and I know it's the right vote now, and we are still moving forward on gun safety. And I'm proud of that vote. So you got to stand up for what you believe in and let the chips fall where they may.
So on that note, obviously defeating Republicans for 2020 is important, but then will come the 2022 midterm elections, which seem thousands of years from now. There is a sense that part of your job as president would need to be both defeating Republicans and converting them. How would you plan to do the latter?
By focusing on the former. And then when you see how many you've defeated, maybe when they feel the heat, they see the light. And I'm very serious about that. And that has proven somewhat effective on occasion. The unfortunate thing is that there really are no moderates left in the Republican caucus, and it has been most unfortunate that we've not had Republicans join us in the effort to defeat climate change. I am so awaiting the arrival of Teddy Roosevelt's, a follower, and we'd like to see that, and we ought to extend a hand, and we do extend a hand to Republicans, to any Republican who will join us in trying to defeat climate change. There are few who have said the words climate change. We should welcome their ideas, but we should realize that if they are unwilling to support us, and unfortunately these folks are now, they've taken their oath to Donald Trump, not to the Constitution. And I would like to think that we'd see more of them stand up and vote against his vanity project in the wall and follow their oath to the Constitution instead of their oath to Donald Trump, both on the wall and climate change. But until they do, they simply need to be retired from public office. And I'm just the guy to do it because I've done it in many places. I was chairman of the Democratic Governors Association this year, and I'm proud to have worked with governors where we flipped more seats from red to blue than any time in the last 36 years. We elected 5 Democratic governors right down the heartland, Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, Illinois, and Kansas, and we can do that again because when we focus on job creation and meat and potato issues and helping tolerance and civility and justice, we win. And we're going to do that in 2020, and I'm looking forward to 2022 as well.
On that note, obviously last cycle you had some big wins with the Democratic Governors Association, but I think some big disappointments, namely in Florida and Georgia. Do you think that the issue there was that those 2 candidates did not focus on meat and potato issues enough?
No, I think those were both fantastic candidates, and they were both inspirational, and they brought new people to the polls in a way that did not suppress their ability in the general election. There were just a few more Republicans right now, and that's changing fairly rapidly. And both of those races do what we so often do in social change, in the effort for more justice. We did not win suffrage the first time. We did not win elections the first time in many of our states where we're now winning. And what Stacey and Andrew did was to advance the cause, to give us new visions of ambition and opportunity, and we're going to be competitive in those two states. So I actually took inspiration from them, and I hope they're going to stay in public life because we love them both.
So can you talk about the lessons that you learned personally and politically from this most recent cycle about, has it changed your approach in terms of how you think about these issues, and more importantly, how you parse them out to a national audience?
I think the most important lesson for the progressive and democratic family is we can win in the Midwest. Now, there was a lot of this falderall going on that somehow we could not connect with people who felt economic anxiety in the Midwest states. We totally disproved that assumption. We proved that we could connect with people who felt economic anxiety in the Midwest. We proved that we could have a vision of jobs through clean energy, where we're growing wind energy right now in the Midwest, in Illinois, which is now advancing 100% clean legislation. We proved that we could connect with sort of meat and potato concerns, where Gretchen said we're going to fix the damn roads in Michigan, and where we had Tony said we're going to make the best schools again in Wisconsin. They appealed to the folks who have felt economic anxiety, and as a result, they won. So we should be confident in our ability to do that as Democrats. We demonstrated in our ability to do that as Democrats, and I believe we're going to do it in 2020. And having led the Democratic governors to that victory, I hope to be raising that flag myself for the Democrats.